yeah, near impossible for me to do so. And I really hate it because sometimes I chat to people about it and we go through a few things like, it doesn't work, you know, I can't get to work, and I'm like, well, the only thing I can really say to you, and we'll talk about this stuff, but this is always a nice thing to know, I suppose, is you won't live at home forever. And when you leave, you'll be able to do whatever you want. And that doesn't help you now, but it's always good to remember that. And so she will be able to leave at some point, and she'll be able to go off, and then she can do whatever she wants. But for now, I think the important thing is for you is to just keep reminding her of why that's the case. You know, she may well be eating, you know, animal products when she's at home, okay? But when you see her, remind her why that's not a bad thing. It's not like judging her or being blaming because she's not doing anything wrong, but it's just like make sure that she doesn't kind of like lull herself into slipping back into it and think it's okay because she's consumed. Always remind her and always talk about it and always show it, so it's always in the forefront of her mind, so that when she does leave, she will do it instantly. But secondly, try and influence her father. What's the relationship?
Yeah, same father.
Same father, okay. You know, can you send him documentaries? Can you explain to him why it's the case? Can you send him What the Health or Cowspiracy or whatever it is? I think often with parents, well, I'll talk about parents for a second. Often with parents, I think that the case is that the reason they don't want the kids to go vegan is because they're worried about health, and you know, and I think that's okay, yeah, good. I mean, you should be worried about, you know, your children's health as a parent, and parents think that eating animal products is the default healthy thing to do, and such they don't want their kids to go vegan because they think it's going to be unhealthy. And so, you know, it seems cruel and it seems wrong, but the mentality is good, and the thought process is good parenting, but it's just not in actuality good parenting. And I also think, you know, when I first went vegan, well, actually, I've been vegan for about a year, and I sent my parents this joint email, and my mum and dad are both divorced, remarried, so I've got two step-parents as well. And so I sent my mum and dad both the same email, separate obviously, basically just like, hi mum, hi dad. I've been vegan for a year now, as you know, but I've never told you why, and I was like, here's a bit on ethics, here's a bit on the environment, here's about health. Lots of love, your son, you know, whatever it was. One you don't talk to, you know, whatever. And my mum replied to me saying that I was going to die from synthetic proteins. And also she said that animals were put here for us to eat. But I don't ever see her go to church. Like, I was so bewildered by that. Like, my mum, I wouldn't say is religious. But then she was like, they've been put here for us to. I was like, by who? You know? So that confused me. But then my dad never replied to me. And so, where am I going with this? And so I was angry, okay? Like, I was really angry. I was like, you know, hate you, you know, whatever it was. And then I thought, well, you know, why have this to me? So I think this is a good thing. Why? You know, why? I think we always have to try and understand things. And so I said, well, why have they said this to me? Why is this, the reaction they've had? And I realized, you know, that parents, you know, I'm going to speak subjectively, and I don't wish to speak on behalf of everyone's families because I don't know what situation you've had. Me subjectively, I know that my mum tried to raise me to be what she would consider to be, you know, a good person with good upstanding morals and a good citizen and, you know, just a good person. And so when I turn around at like 20 years old and I say, look mum, I'm vegan now, I don't think killing animals is okay, what I'm kind of saying subconsciously, not directly, but what she's hearing is the way you raised me is wrong. You did a bad job. You made me a bad person. And so I think that's why any parent that goes vegan when their child does requires a special amount of gratitude and respect. And because I think it takes a huge amount of humility and humbleness to accept that you yourself not only lived necessarily in a way that is immoral, but actually you raised your kids in a way that is immoral. And that doesn't mean it's your fault, because I don't blame my mum for doing that. I think, you know, I understand that she tried to, you know, give me good morals and such. But that's what I'm saying to her. And so for your father, you know, with you being vegan, and now if your sisters also want to go vegan, it could be that subconsciously he's hearing, you know, you've done a bad job, you know, you weren't a very good father and stuff like that. And I think that's a healthy thing to try and empathise with. It doesn't give him a free pass, but I think it's good to empathise with that. So I just encourage them to remember that, but also to try and show documentaries, try and watch videos, try and encourage in a situation where you can, if you have an opportunity. I don't know what your relationship with your father's like, so, but if you have a decent enough relationship where you can speak to him and do those things, then do that. But also empower your sister to do the same and to take opportunities at the dinner table to talk about it, because it's kind of persistence. And so, like I said, my dad didn't reply to my email at first, you know, and then that was 2 years ago. Well, actually 2.5 years ago now. And in January this year, I did a live debate with a dairy farmer on the BBC. And, you know, afterwards I was like, you know, I'm going to send this to my mum and dad. You know, they didn't really know about Earthling Ed, you know, or anything like that. So I'm like, I'm going to send this to my dad and my mum, and you know, I'm going to bear all, you know, and let them say what they want. And so I sent it to my mum, and she's like, okay, cool, I'll watch it later. And then I sent it to my dad, and he said, I know about Earthling Ed. I was like, and he went, your auntie is a big fan. We watched this, the whole family watched this morning. And he said, you were very persuasive. And I was like, oh, persuasive, you say? Oh, okay. So it went from him like completely ignoring me, not talking to me about it, to you were very persuasive. And it wasn't just like, okay, you watched it. And he said, what did he say? He said if it was a boxing match, you'd have won by points. Okay, so you accept that I was right. So he ain't vegan yet, at least he hasn't told me it is, but what it shows is there has been a progression made. And so perseverance is key. And it can take time with family and friends, because we often hold our family to a higher standard, because we've been raised with them, we know them. We for the most part can see that they're probably decent people and such, and so we hold them to a higher standard, and so we feel more disappointed by them. And also, I think there's sometimes that thing of like parents know best, and the child learns from the parent, and so there's this kind of sometimes an imbalance of power when the child is trying to teach the parent something, because like no, this is a subversion of our family dynamic and such. And so perseverance, I think, is key. Be patient. Don't stop. Just keep nagging away. Be a pest. You can argue with your family. That's another thing about family is we're afraid of arguing, but that's a luxury you have with your family, because you can argue with them because your family, and that's something you're allowed to do. So if you get in a situation where you have an argument, don't swear. Like you'll be fine. At the end of the day, you're still going to be fine. So I hope so at least. Sometimes they're not great. But so you can push boundaries a little bit further is what I mean. So patience, perseverance, documentaries, YouTube clips, studies, whatever it is he wants to hear. Get your daughter to be a mouthpiece for veganism and get her just to spew as much as she can as well, and hopefully over time it'll change. Hope that answers your question. What time do we have to finish? We're running 12 minutes over. So we'll do one more question. Sorry, just because this gentleman raised his hand first.
Thanks for coming.
My pleasure, thanks for having me.
Nice to have you.
That's nice to be here.
I find you very inspiring.
Thank you.
My question is, quite a lot of people say there's a multitude of people, humans, that are suffering.
Yes.
We'll focus on them.
Yes. Human suffering and animal suffering isn't mutually exclusive. You don't have to. We are at a point where we can care about more than one issue at a time, which is why you can care about homelessness and famine. You can care about more than one issue, and so you can care about human rights and animal rights in tangent, or in tandem. It's probably the word, in tandem. And feel passionately about both. And so I think that's the first thing to kind of acknowledge, that it's not like a one or the other. You don't have to pick and choose. You can very much be aware of all suffering and be aligned to end all suffering. And I also don't like. I've been guilty of this myself, but I actually don't like using when people use veganism as some sort of solution for all problems. And I say I've been guilty of that myself because sometimes I talk about a vegan utopia, whatever. And if we all went vegan, the world would be beautiful. And if I'm being realistic, just because you're vegan doesn't make you a good person, right? And just because you've decided, well, I don't want to harm animals, doesn't mean that you're an upstanding citizen all of a sudden. Because not harming animals is just a very basic. It's a very, very basic thing to come to terms with. It doesn't require something special or noble about you. It's just, well, duh, of course, like harming animals. And so I was chatting with this to someone the other day, and what was it that they said? You cannot do something really bad that doesn't make you a wholly good person, is the point that I'm making. And so I think that what I will say about veganism, and this is one of the reasons I'm against lab-grown meat, actually, which is interesting, but what I will say about veganism is I think that it is a stepping stone towards a more conscious and ethical progress. And I think that's how we overcome systems of oppression. It's not just simple, vegan world will solve these problems. It's not about that. It's about a conscious shift, a moral conscious shift. That's how we can solve inequality on all its different forms, and oppression, all its different ugly, manifestations. And so I strongly believe that simply not harming animals isn't what will help everyone. But that shift of consciousness to saying, well, actually, let's treat all life with respect. Let's treat all life with dignity. Let's all treat all life as viewing them as, even though they may not look like us or act like us or walk like us or talk like us or whatever, they still deserve the same respect to live like us. And I think that's how we can start to solve more issues within our own species as well, by taking those steps towards understanding that life itself is a very precious and very unique experience that we should all be entitled to live, individually and without inflicted exploitation. And so this is why it becomes difficult, because, you know, and obviously veganism does solve a lot of human rights problems, you know, it's situations of slaughterhouse workers and even farmers, you know, who have to do the killing day in, day out and do the mutilations. You know, slaughterhouse workers are well documented to have among the highest rates of PTSD, depression, anxiety, you know, even suicide, terrible, terrible things. And so the human rights atrocities that occur in slaughterhouses are absolutely horrific. You know, in America, you have illegal immigrants being hired by these places. There's even situations where they make them wear nappies so they don't get toilet breaks. Stuff, crazy things like that. Ugly things like that, you know, really horrible. And so it's an obliteration of the system of slaughtering animals would actually be a liberation for humans who were enslaved as well, and who are victims. It's a different type of victim and a different type of enslavement, but it's still very much enslavement as well, because, you know, slaughterhouses are put in areas of impoverishment. They often have slightly higher wages than those of other labour jobs in the areas to entice people to do them, because, you know, putting a slaughterhouse in an affluent area, it's not going to get filled, right? You put a slaughterhouse in an area that has no job opportunities of people that have families to feed and children to look after, all of a sudden you're going to get CVs handed in because people need jobs. And so they exploit that. They exploit people's poverty. They exploit people's disadvantage to their own insidious, you know, for their own insidious reasons as well. And so that's a human rights infringement that could be solved from that. There's this thing of famine, and, you know, and again, I've been guilty of saying this, and you say, well, look, you know, we have enough food to feed over 10 billion people, but the food that we feed to livestock animals, which is why we live in a world where 800 million to 1 billion people live in a state of starvation or hunger. And so eradication of animal agriculture would actually free up food to feed every hungry mouth. And very much the logic is there, it's very much in place, but it also kind of ignores the fact that the food is only grown to feed those animals, and such it needs a destabilization of the economic system as well. But there's the groundwork there to eradicate famine as well, if implemented correctly. There's situations of slavery in Thailand and Southeast Asia where people are forced into boats, literally kidnapped, forced onto boats and spend their lives deshelling shrimp, catching shrimp, and this shrimp has been found in Whole Foods and places like that. They're very much, you know, places where we can easily buy shrimp is often a product of slavery. This is well documented as well. The Guardian did a massive expose on this, and so there's situations of slavery in marine fishing and marine hunting as well. So leather tanneries in Bangladesh, so a tannery where you take a cow skin, because skin is flesh, it rots. So to produce leather, you know, we have to make something that's durable. People always say leather is durable. Okay, well, how do you make something that rots into something that's durable? Well, you use chemicals like chromium and all these horrible cancerous toxic chemicals, and so this happens in places called tanneries. And so in Bangladesh, 90%, it could be 95%, 90% of tannery workers die before the age of 50 because of cancer and different things like that. Not only that, but the chemicals that have been used to create these leather products and stuff have been flushed into waterways and systems, which means that local communities are drinking chemicals, they're dying earlier. You have women giving birth to heavily deformed and terribly disabled children because of the chemicals they're ingesting, which is disrupting the creation of that baby. And so there are a huge amount of problems that occur to humans directly because of animal agriculture or animal exploitation. And so a complete eradication of animal exploitation will actually solve a huge amount of human injustices, but not all of them. There's systematic oppressions, there's systematic things that, you know, we also have to tackle, which requires a mental or a consciousness shift. And that's why, that's a complete, I've talked, wow. Primarily what I'm saying is, yes, human and animal oppressions are not mutually exclusive. They are things that we can tackle together. A vegan world is a fantastic step in the right direction in solving all forms of oppression. It's not the only step we have to take, but it's a very important step because it's a step in that shift of consciousness. And actually, I said this is why I don't agree with lab-grown meat, and this is what I'll end with. Lab-grown meat is a great thing in the sense that it's a fantastic way of ending animal farming. You know, if we produce lab-grown meat and we eradicate animal farming, then it's not only better for the trillions of animals, but it's also better for the environment. So we can reduce our environmental impact by like 98% or something from lab-grown meat. And so it ticks all the boxes of being really fantastic. But the problem I find is that it stunts us. It stunts our development as a species. Now, if we get lab-grown meat tomorrow, I would, you know, hallelujah, let's do it. That's amazing. That'd be amazing. But the problem is veganism for me is not just about the food that we eat. It is literally a change of mentality, and it's what I keep saying, consciousness shift, and I don't want to sound like a new age spiritual, because I really am not. I'm very much too cynical to believe in that stuff, but at the same time, I do believe that our consciousness has an ability to expand and progress. And so when we switch to lab-grown meat, we're not actually expanding our consciousness, we're merely substituting what we are eating for something that's exactly the same but grown in laboratories, and so it actually stunts our growth as a species. And I think that we're not going to solve or tackle so many of the world's problems because we're stunting ourselves. And then we can go say, oh, okay, right, great, we're all vegan now because we're eating lab-grown meat, so that's perfect. Actually, no, veganism isn't about what we eat. It's about that step in the right direction towards creating a more moral and progressive society. And we won't achieve that if we simply just buy something that was grown in a lab, you know. And we have to change our mindsets and live more harmoniously and symbiotically. And the only way we do that is by embracing that conscious shift, not just lab-grown meat. And that's why I'm opposed to it, but I also want it to happen tomorrow. Anyway, I'll end it there. I hope that answers your question. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it's been a while, so I hope you're okay.